Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, sometimes you think that you're feeling like a zero. A lot of entrepreneurs and consultants and coaches and corporate refugees specifically, they feel like they're going from zero to hero. But I've got the man, I've got the myth, I've got the legend who himself went from zero to hero in under a year, as he likes to put it, even if you're broke, unemployed, and feel completely hopeless. Please welcome Mr. Ben Albert.
I'm excited to be here. I was binging your podcast last night. Incredible show, incredible guests. And you've got a face for podcasting. So I love it, David. I'm excited.
I do. I totally do. And a hairstyle for podcasting.
Hey, I'm getting close. I'm losing mine.
There you go. Yeah. That's you join the club. I'll send you your certificate and your membership card. It's going to be tremendous. Tell us the Ben Albert story. Give us a little bit of the backstory of how you came to the work that you're doing today, and then we'll jump into the zero to hero details.
You got it. And the clickbait is, in just under a year, I was furloughed from work and replaced my sales executive income as an entrepreneur. But it really isn't that simple. There is a lot of struggle. There is a lot of regret and abuse and failure to get there. And the first 13 years of my life, don't ask me why. I just didn't feel like I was enough. I was the shortest kid in school. I wanted to be a basketball player, had a jersey for every single day of the week, wanted to be the Michael Jordan, wanted to be Vince Carter, slam dunk competition, but I was going to live to be about 5'8", so there was no basketball in my professional future. But imagine you're the shortest kid, you play basketball, and you're quiet. Like, I barely spoke the first 13 years of my life. Well, what do you think happens at a very young age? You get bullied, you get picked on, and then you feel kind of like you don't belong. And it didn't help. Love them both to death was out of my control. But my father was a drug abuser and alcoholic. He ended up drinking himself to death. And my mom had a mental disorder that started to develop when I was very young. So I felt kind of detached at the household. And the whole reason I tell this end of the story is it wasn't until I was basically a teenager in high school that I fell in love with the music industry. And this quiet kid started to find his voice. And the reason I started to find my voice is because I was aligned with something I was passionate about. And then I started handing out flyers for local bands. I was doing merch booths. I was setting up MySpace pages at the time. And I was the promoter for local bands. And all this weirdness in my childhood was happening for me because I found my place and my tribe in music. And I wasn't the best musician. I didn't even know what it was at the time, but I was the promoter and the marketer. So that's when nowadays I realized that my life in marketing was beginning. And then a lot happened along the way. Go to school, end up in retail, finally end up in marketing without actually knowing I was going to go in that direction. And then slowly in the sales role in a marketing company, was working my way up, building a book of business, had fantastic momentum. And then guess what happens? COVID hits. And when I'm doing video production nationally, there's no travel, there's no person video, there's no fulfillment, there's no sales. So I had no animosity to anybody but the circumstance itself. I was let go and put in a weird place. And then I'd love for our conversation to tackle what I did, because a lot put me in a position to be successful. It's not like I just snapped my fingers and had the right tools, but the growth mindset, the love of podcasting, the understanding of marketing and sales, and the working twice as much as some people do, which you need to do in some cases in life, allowed me to scale my company quickly. And thank God, because 5 years ago, I would have failed. 10 years ago, I would have failed. 15 years ago, I would have just smoked pot and not even got started. So humbled to be here. And that's my my story and I'm sticking to it.
Really, really good. So take us, I mean, I want to go almost day by day, right? So
How long do you have?
we are kicked to the curb. And I remember I was laid off a grand total of one time, but I will never forget. It was Valentine's Day. It was Valentine's Day. And I was like, wow, that's cold. That is just cold. And like time slowed down for me. And it was like, it was like Alice in Wonderland, right? The world starts spinning and you're like, what the hell do I do? Who am I now that I don't have this job? Do I go back in and try and get another job that's exactly like this job, and some of which I liked and some of which I didn't? So what was it like for you? And then talk to us about this shift into entrepreneur thinking, and what were some of the first crazy entrepreneurial ideas that you had that started to take shape?
Absolutely. And one thing, because it's on my mind, I'm just imagining like Valentine's Day dinner. How was your day, honey? Oh, I was just started firing people.
It was bad. It was bad.
I, like Alice in Wonderland, was in a dizzy haze myself because, like my father, when I struggled, I often go to alcohol and drugs, smoke too much pot, drink too much alcohol. And imagine you're filling your bucket as quickly as possible. And what I mean by filling your bucket is I start hiking more than ever. I have all this free time. I start binge podcasting and binge reading and doing all these things that are filling me up. So I'm filling my bucket, but at the same time, I'm cutting holes in the bottom of the bucket with my drinking, with my detachment. I was in a really dark spot. I was in a haze. I was doing all this stuff that was lighting me up, and then I was drinking and basically drinking myself into a stupor. And the first thing I did was I got on LinkedIn to apply for jobs because I knew that at one point, LinkedIn was a great job board, right? And I hadn't touched that LinkedIn profile since like 2010. So I went on LinkedIn, set up, my profile, did this cover letter like story about what are you going to do in the midst of the pandemic? Or am I going to be worse or am I going to be better? I'm here to be better and elevate my career. Wrote the sob story LinkedIn profile and clicked done and didn't get a job. So I remember one day I'm laying on my bed, and this happened a lot of times, but one day I just had that aha moment. I'm laying in my bed staring at an empty handle of Jim Beam whiskey that I had drank over the 3 days prior. And I look up at my laptop which had LinkedIn pulled up. And I had this come to Jesus, I guess we'll call it, moment that all I need is a laptop to be a marketer. Why am I so depressed? And have I just been following what everyone tells me I'm supposed to do? I have skills. Why am I trying so hard to go impress an employer when I have the skill set? And on the side, I had started a music podcast in 2016 and ran that for 6 years. So I did do some entrepreneurial stuff. I used to book bands. I ultimately would break even. I wasn't making money, but I got into places for free. So I understood entrepreneurship a little bit, but I had never started a business. So the next move was, I've got a stimulus check. Let's form an LLC. So I formed an LLC without knowing what I was going to do. But one thing I found on LinkedIn is it wasn't just a job board. It was a social network. And we can get as minute as you'd like, but I decided let's put away Music Ben. Music Ben is passionate but has a lot of problems. Let's reinvent myself and start Business Ben. Business Ben was personal growth driven, business driven. I started a business podcast by networking on LinkedIn. I started it in my hometown of Rochester, New York, and I utilized the building of relationships in my hometown during the pandemic to create, a foundation that I could build my business on. And since I was working for myself, I was agile and skilled. I didn't need 50 clients right off the bat. So every client produced a little bit of revenue. And over time, even just a client a month is significant over a 12-month period. And before you know it, I'm like, holy bleep, I don't need to go back to corporate. I think I can do this long term.
We interrupt this interview with an important announcement. If you're committed to better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees, get over to doitselling.com right now and grab a copy of my new book. That's the deal, kids. Grab a copy of the new book and then get all the bonuses, companion tools, trainings, and downloads at doitselling.com. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. That's how it works. I'll see you over there.
Talk a little bit about, because it sounds like, I mean, you mentioned early in the intro, there was a lot of mistakes, there was a lot of heartaches, there was a lot of things that kind of blew up. Talk about kind of marketing and selling and the whole concept of you only eat what you kill. And there's no more paycheck, there's no more stability, and you're literally paycheck to paycheck, client to client. How did you overcome looking into the abyss? And what were some of the strategies early on, marketing wise and sales wise, that you found to work really well?
Yeah, so I'll get into the strategies, but I want to be transparent with everybody. Part about only eating what I kill, a lot of us saw this during the pandemic. The government was cutting pretty nice checks, whether or not you were employed. So I qualified for part-time unemployment, and the government was paying me to be unemployed as I worked part-time. So in essence, I had someone feeding me, and that's not beyond me that I had a little bit of help here.
Yeah.
And part of why I preface that is I never encourage people to just quit their job emotionally and start a passion project. I encourage them to have sustainable income. In my case, it was forced upon me and the government provided that sustainable income. And I did have money saved, but case in point, I didn't just have to eat what I killed. The government helped me. Transparency. I don't want to manipulate the situation. That's how it was. It helped. Right. So what I did is I utilized LinkedIn to start having conversations again through the podcast. And this is me.
So when you say through the podcast, I just want to break this down so that people like taking notes furiously. You would use LinkedIn to invite people to be a guest on your show.
I'll tell you exactly how it worked. And it's funny because now I understand what I did. And a lot of it was smart and a lot of it was sales and marketing strategy, but I didn't have a guidebook. I'm giving you guys the guidebook right now. So I started super hyper local, Rochester, New York, my hometown, business owners, because I'm a B2B marketer. And let's be honest, my ideal client connection, referral partner, peer is a business owner in Rochester, New York. I am a minnow in an ocean of sameness. Why am I going to start the next Joe Rogan, Ed Milet, Brene Brown podcast? I'm nothing compared to them. Let's be real. So I start in Rochester, New York. Imagine how much easier it is to build reputation when you're a business podcast in a small city. It's a lot easier than a lot of things. So what I did to kind of bridge the gap, I went to SUNY Brockport State University of New York, Brockport. I went on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We can get into the tiny details, but I utilized Sales Navigator, 30-day free month trial. So it was no cost to me to even try it. I got on Sales Navigator and I searched for business owners who went to SUNY Brockport. I didn't have a name for the podcast yet, but I had an idea. And honestly, what's the point in naming it and creating a logo when you don't even have guests? So I had an idea and it was simple, basically of saying like, hey, David, I see you went to SUNY Brockport as well. Congrats on making it big time. I'm being transparent. I just started my business, but I love Rochester and I'm looking to start a podcast to highlight our community leaders. Would you want to be a part of that? What do you think the success rate on that kind of offer would be?
Pretty darn high.
Would you like to be featured for free where you get to talk about yourself? We have something in common and we can do it over Zoom during a pandemic where we feel disconnected. That's the subcontext.
Yeah.
So I started booking guests and then I started this podcast and I gained a little bit of momentum. I'm thinking, let's do a 10 episode launch, but I got a lot of yeses. And it ended up being a 22 episode launch where November of 2020, I should have verified November of 2020, I launched the podcast, did 22 episodes, an episode a day, Monday through Friday, then reduced it to 2. A lot has happened since then. I've got a bunch of different shows, but those connections seeded opportunity because I didn't do it on person one, but I learned this over time. Simple sales. What do a lot of salespeople don't do, but it's the obvious thing to do to bring more opportunity for you? Ask for referrals. Pretty darn simple. I don't like the word referral. It's kind of transactional, especially I'm running a podcast. I would say, hey, you really over delivered today. Obviously, you know smart people. Do you have any nominations for the show? And then, Joe Schmo, Joe Schmo sounds condescending. Nate Hasto, who's a good friend of mine, I'm now part of his leadership team at a networking group, would go, yeah, I know like 6 people. And then the podcast started by organically networking based on nominations from my original outreach guests, because good people know good people that want to jump on a podcast and make introductions. And then I kind of created that organic reach where still hardly anyone in Rochester knows who I am, but the people that do know me through the podcast, I'm building a relationship with. There's a lot of relationship building, rapport, and something that's nuanced and kind of a side point is I wanted to over deliver. I showed up on time. I came prepared. I did great post production. I promoted. I shared it to my email list. I thanked them. I texted them the morning of. These are all just like tiny minutia podcasting tips, but I did that from the start because I didn't quite know, but I kind of understood, like, if you give someone a business-like experience, even as a volunteer, even if you're donating your time, even if you're donating your time now knowing that you'll gain proceeds later, if you give them a business-like experience, they know what it looks like to work with you, and it makes it a lot easier for them to refer you, because whether or not they spent money on you, they know what it would be like to spend money on you. So most of my guests are not clients, but a handful of them are my closest partners and cheerleaders. That's what I did. It's really that simple. The one thing I'll add, you need to show up. You need to do the best you can. You want to work on your craft, because you can take this template, but if you're boring, unengaged, and being selfish, it won't work. But if you're looking to level up every day and you're more intentional with what you do to level up every day, I'm sure you'll be successful. You might stink at the front, but you'll get better every day.
So talk a little bit about what would happen either before the interview or after the interview with the guest that would lead to nominations or business introductions, or, hey, Ben, maybe you can help me in my business. I know you said that many of your guests, are not clients.
Yeah.
I'm sure a few became clients at some point, but so you're saying it was not an intentional podcast prospecting strategy, but it was potential partners, centers of influence, people that could introduce you to others. Is that correct?
It's both. The key is I was detached from outcome, which is difficult at times.
Yes.
But I knew that I was talking to a business owner. That means they're possibly a prospect, and I might be a good fit. But I don't know that. I don't know Joe from John until I get to know Joe and John. So yeah, they're possibly a prospect. They definitely are a business owner in my hometown. Another key point that kind of goes overlooked is the soft skills you gain and just the career development you gain from learning from brilliant people. Even if you're not trying to start a podcast as a prospecting strategy at all, as a networking strategy at all, you can start a podcast. People charge hundreds, if not thousands per hour for their time, and they'll put their chips on you, spend that time with you, and you get to ask them anything you want.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That in itself is its weight in gold.
Absolutely right. Well, I can totally endorse. Well, I'm endorsing everything that you're saying, but more specifically, you get some brilliant person and you're like, I actually have, this is not just a theoretical podcast question. I really have this question for my business or for myself. And you ask and they give the answer. You're like, wow, that's good. I'm totally using that. So it's like free consulting, right? If you're a podcast host, you get free consulting from the smartest people that you want to reach out to. Really, really cool. I love that. Now, talk about this amazing portfolio of businesses and podcast networks, and just even going to your website. which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's Balbert Marketing, which is the letter B and then Albert and your last name. So balbertmarketing.com. You've got multiple podcasts, multiple businesses, multiple other domains. You got the Rochester Groove Cast. You've got professional 2D videos, contractor landing pages, digital video, logos, branding, website. So unpack that for us. And how many different revenue streams do you have in the Balbert empire right now?
Yeah, it's common in the sales world. You'll know the phrase spray and pray.
For
Maybe
sure.
a little bit of that. And again, I didn't take an MBA driven 10-week to start your business course.
Yeah.
I just started creating products. So a lot that's on that landing page, I'm going to be rebuilding the site because I'm trying to trim down my offerings, because there is 3 revenue streams in a sense. There's Balbert Marketing itself. To step back, I joke I ask questions for a living. In the marketing firm, that's asking questions to find unique solutions to complex problems and seeing if I have products and services that can help solve those problems. So online SEO, web design, content marketing, video, 2D videos, all that stuff on that list basically falls under Balbert Marketing. The podcast, Real Business Connections Network, again, once Rochester Business Connections, now rebranded to Real Business Connections, is all about asking great questions and getting wisdom from the people that have it to the people who need it. That's more of a marketing tool than it is a revenue generating stream. But as I was building out Balbert Marketing, traditional online marketing, all my clients were coming through podcasting, LinkedIn, and social selling. And most of my questions were about podcasting, LinkedIn, and social selling. So why do I have this long list of products and services under Balbert Marketing, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, when all my clients come from X, Y, and Z? So what I've currently been doing is transitioning out of being a more traditional online marketing firm to double down on marketing for podcasts. That's for a host that wants to amplify their message, SEO optimize their show notes, et cetera, or a guest that wants to basically be the goodwill of all the time that hosts put in by over delivering on podcasts and going on a podcast tour. So those are the main 2 streams, with the podcasting, the future of what I'm doing. And then the deeper future is I want to have a conversation with you offline. I'm looking for creative partners because I don't have every answer. But as a podcast, I'm a hub of answers. I want to build up a team of people that it's not white labeling and selling it as your own. I just want to be a referral source for businesses all across the globe. And in a perfect world, I would do the podcast, help my podcast clients, and then anybody that weren't in my zone of genius, I'd have a partner like yourself to send to. So that's kind of the 3 streams and where we're going for the future.
Very nice. Wow. It's a great way to think about it, that, A, niching down, and then B, taking the other revenue streams and saying, well, that's not me, but I know really great people, and why not monetize those relationships with the referral network? Really, really smart. Tell us a little bit about one of the things that we said we might get to is the real key to success. The real key to success, bordering on getting a little bit zen, getting a little bit philosophical, a little bit meta. Ben, in your experience, what is the real key to success?
Yeah, it's a speaking topic I have on my sheet, and it's kind of a curveball question because the answer is there is no key. It's a combination lock. And each and every one of us has our own unique combination, similar to a fingerprint. Why do you think they take your fingerprint when you get in trouble? It's because you can't replicate a fingerprint. You can't replicate success. So I'm talking about exactly what I did. And even as I talk about it in a concise manner, I hope that this can possibly help somebody, because it took me thousands and thousands of hours just to put together these thoughts in a concise way because I was doing it and making mistakes.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about today was my key to success. But part of it was extracting wisdom from every one of my guests, from every one of my clients, from my family and everyone I meet. In some scenarios, you extract more wisdom than others, but you're going to create your own combination. And I think it's a big asterisk in life that if someone says you need to do this, you should do this, and if you do not follow my playbook, you are wrong, they're probably just trying to sell you a product. You can create your own playbook. There is something to say that if what Ben does works, what David does works, maybe copy it, like implement what we've done. But at some point, you want to create your own plays, because the key to success is not mimicking someone else. It's taking the wisdom from many mentors and creating your own unique self, because that's another thing we could talk about. You're freaking unique. You have your own unique story. Stop telling someone else's story. Tell your own, but take, little widgets from other people's stories to help create your own and tell it to the world ultimately.
Yes. Yeah. So smart, Ben. I think there's a ancient Chinese philosopher that had a quote that goes something like the following, and I'm paraphrasing: don't follow in the great one's footsteps. Seek what they sought. Right? So it's like we're all looking down the horizon. Yes, of course, the great ones or the Bens of the world, etc. Your footsteps got you to that path, but we can't just mimic Ben or copy Ben. We have to find our own path to that same destination. So don't follow in their footsteps. Seek what they sought.
You just said the great ones and the Bens of the world in the same sentence. Have I made it? Did I just make it on this podcast?
Dude, I think you're there. Frankly, I think any entrepreneur who can put food on the table is a success. Period. End of story. It's hard enough as it is, right?
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there.
I'm curious, and I've never thought about this until just talking to you right now here in the moment. From a marketing standpoint or a business development or a relationship development standpoint, talk about which half falls under podcast hosting and which half falls under podcast guesting. Because I think a lot of people listening, they say, well, I don't want to have my own show, but I love what Ben is saying about podcast guesting. Other people like, podcast guesting. No. I want to run the show. I want to own the platform. I want to invite people like Ben invited people. But I think you're developing some kind of synergy between, well, actually, it's three levels in your case. It's podcast network, then it's podcast host of those various shows. And as we're doing right now in this particular moment, you are a podcast guest. How do you see the yin and the yang of podcast guest, podcast host, and building sort of a marketing platform around the combination?
That's a great question. I don't have a perfect answer for you. But what's coming to mind is it's very much like a smoothie. It's a mix of flavors, but they go great together. It's like peanut butter, jelly, and fluff, where they all go great together. For me personally, the number one reason why I started my podcast was so I could learn and network. People used to kind of joke that I'm like a thought leader of getting together thought leaders, because I wouldn't really provide, I still don't. Like if it's political or offensive, I try to slow someone down, but I try to maintain just kind of a pragmatic, even keel point and just ask questions, because I was never there to be the thought leader. I was there to learn, ask questions, and be a platform. And that allowed me to learn from brilliant people, edify them, help them look good, help them feel understood, and ultimately learn a lot of network while I do it. That's where I was in my life. Podcasting as a host, you basically have the table. So if you want a seat at the table, if you want an opportunity to be on the mic. If you want that opportunity and you feel like you're not good at golf or you're just like struggling to get there, why don't you just bring your own table and bring your own mic? So that's what I did. I brought my own table and brought my own mic. So if that's where you're at, it's a great move. It also takes a lot of time. So that's the thing. You need the time commitment, but you want to have to be able to commit to creating a platform that didn't exist before you. The guesting's a little bit different. Here's the thing. Again, I barely talked about what I did for almost 100 episodes. I just asked questions. Guesting is more for the amplification of your thought leadership. It's an amplification of your personal brand. The podcast itself was kind of like, welcome to Rochester Business Connections, powered by Ballard Marketing LLC. It was building business relationships, but it wasn't really amplifying my brand the same way that guesting on a podcast. And Christy Mitchell, a friend of mine, mentioned like one of the best things I ever did is I wrote down all my achievements for the year. And she told me that. And I was like, wow. And then in mid 21, and then all of 2022, I wrote down every achievement. And then I saw that I have been on over 75 podcasts over a year. I had done like 175 podcasts in a year. I had spoken on panels and spoken at live events. And then when you go to my speaking bio sheet, there's this long list of achievements and accomplishments. That's the thought leadership end. But in that case, I didn't have to bring the table. I didn't have to bring the mic. Someone else brought it and I showed up, talked, walked out the door. That being said, I always followed up with the host. I wish them a thank you. I share it, reshare it on social media. I continue the conversation. So the relationship piece is continuing the conversation and building relationship. But realistically, just the act of getting on a podcast is to build thought leadership. So you've got building of relationships, you've got building of thought leadership, you've got bringing your own table, you've got being invited at other people's tables. And then the production end of things, the production kind of strategy end of stuff for me is me just realizing that I know what I'm doing and I need to start charging for it. It's really that simple.
Yes, I love that. Wow.
No one's ever asked me that. So I was kind of figuring it out on the spot. But the one word answer is this is more than one word. It's a blend. It all blends together.
Totally. I love that. So as we're landing the plane, I'm going to ask you two final questions. The final question is, how can people get connected and stay connected to more Ben Albert brilliance? But even before we go there, second to last question, if folks were to take one overarching idea from our kind of corporate refugees, zero to hero, build your own play set, play by your rules, don't try and fit in with someone else's rules, all of these gems that we've been dropping here, what would you hope that one core takeaway would be for listeners?
Yeah, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, no one's coming to save you. And if you can implement one thing that you learned today, you can level up and you don't have to do it alone. No one's coming to save you, but if you bring the table, if you ask for a seat at the table, if you implement what you learned, I had this struggle most of my life. I treated podcasting and books as infotainment, and I actually had a lot of shame and regret that I had the answer, but I was afraid to open my mouth because I wasn't living in alignment with the answer, so I would have been a scam. If you have the answer, if you wrote something down, if something stood out to you, take 5 minutes to implement it. Do 5 minutes a day. If you allow me to kind of joke around with this analogy. So imagine you and I go to a teeth brushing seminar. I am pumped up. I vigorously brush my teeth for 6 hours straight. And you listen, take notes, and realize, okay, I'm supposed to brush my teeth, a minute or two a day with flossing twice a day. I'm pumped up, brush my teeth, leave. I'm done for the year. You brush your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes a day, every day in 365 days. Who's going to have better teeth next year?
The 2-minute guy.
Exactly. So that's the takeaway. Even if it's just being the 2-minute guy, even if it's not even something I said and it's from a previous episode, 2 minutes a day, make it 20 and you'll be even better.
So good. So good. Ben Albert, where can we send people? What resources? Where can we drop some show notes here so folks can get connected and stay connected to you.
Yeah. And I alluded to this, David. You gave me a mic and a seat at your table, and that's humbling. So I encourage people, if they're not driving or in the midst of a sprint, to make sure they're subscribed here. Even if you don't leave a long review, you can hit 5 stars or hit a like on most platforms. In Real Business Connections, that's my overarching podcast network. Real Business Connections, exactly how it sounds, can be found wherever you found this. If you don't find it, I'm doing something wrong as a marketer if you can't find it. I know if you Google search me, but wherever you are right now, just type in Real Business Connections.
Real Business Connections. Awesome. And we're going to help you out, folks, because we're going to drop a couple of links to Ben's World right in the show notes here. But you wouldn't even have to come here to thesellingshow.com. You wouldn't have to find Ben's episode because you heard what to do. Just type in Real Business Connections and Ben's World will magically appear before your eyes. Ben Albert, you are a rock star. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for dropping all this value on our listeners.
So much fun. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.